Hi everyone, I am Bhagavan Sarpong Kumankumah. I'm a Ghanaian born in Ghana, but was born into a Hindu family way back in 1986. My parents have been practicing Hinduism from 1975. That's a long time before I was born. And so I have learned a lot through while I was growing up. I've attended a lot of schools, from the Christian Catholic schools through to having a lot of Muslim friends, Buddhist, and then a lot of friends from the African traditional religion. Um, but before we start, let us pray. Om Loka Samasta Sokenu Bawantu. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Anyway, I've got some people who would not understand what we just said. I know many of you would understand the mantra I just said, but I've got some few friends online who didn't understand. So what I just said in the prayer was that may all beings everywhere be happy and free. May all the thoughts, words, and actions of my own life contribute to this happiness and freedom that I wish for everyone. So basically, the Om Loka Samasta Sukenu Bawantu simply means what I just said. I'm greeting you from Ghana. It's morning, so in Ghana we say March. And I'm sure it's in the evening in India, somewhere 4 p.m. So we would say, if you were in Ghana, we would have said Majo. So this is just a language, okay? I feel privileged to have the opportunity to have this interaction with a lot of people around the world, and then the honor to speak to great men and women with so much knowledge. I feel blessed. It's a great opportunity. Like I said, from my background as a Hindu, I understand what we are made of, the individual souls, the Atma. And I believe that when a lot of the Atmas come together, they form the Paratma, that's the Supreme Being. So I feel I'm right now before the Supreme Being, saying I've got a lot of Atmas all together representing the Supreme Being. So hurry on to everyone. Okay, so on this topic, the universality of Sanatana Dharma, with more focus on the traces of Sanatana Dharma in the Ghanaian traditional practice. You'll be surprised to know that many people do not know what exactly the Sanatana Dharma is. So I would like to use this opportunity to explain to the very few people who have no idea what the Sanatana Dharma is. Sanatana Dharma, as it says, is a Sanskrit word from the ancient Indian language, which many of you can Google and check. It's as old as the world. So many of you can Google and check. The Sanskrit word Sanatana Dharma is literally translated as eternal way. There are others who will prefer to say the eternal truth, and others will say the eternal path. It depends on the context or the angle one is coming from. But Sanatana simply is the one that can easily be translated as eternal. The Dharma depends on the context in which one is using the word. So we have people choosing to say the way, others path, truth, irrespective of whatever it is. It simply refers to the way of life that draws one closer to the ultimate. So basically, it is what I would prefer to call it the eternal natural way. I prefer to call it Sanatana Dharma, the eternal natural way. So the natural way of living life. So basically, people may ask, what exactly is this way that we will call eternal way? It's as simple as that, and there are some principles which we will call the dharmic values that one is expected to live. And these include reverence to nature and deep environmentalism, God-centeredness, nobility in our thoughts and words and deeds. And we're cultivating a life of ethical values, recognizing the feminine aspect of the divine. That is the only one that probably most Western regions do not appreciate. But in the Eastern religions and down here in Africa, there is a recognition of the feminine aspect of the divine. One of the ways we will say you are living a dharmic life is unity in diversity, respecting all living beings. That is why probably you would hear, oh, why don't you people kill animals? It's that respect for all living beings. We do not consider whether it is big animal, small animal, everything that has life in it must be accorded the respect. And there is something that I call living organic life. It's a very key part of the Dharmic values as one would have to live to be able to say you are living the Sanatana Dharma life. Meditation, and then reverence and veneration for our ancestors. I will come back to this point, how we will give reverence to our ancestors. These are the things that I'm going to link to how you can see there are traces of Sanatana Dharma in the African or the Akan traditional way of worship or practice. Self-realization, simplicity, loyalty, these are very key things that when we say one is practicing Dharmic life. All right, so let me quickly bring you to what we call the Akan traditional religion. Akan is an ethnic group which has its people across the whole of Ghana, probably 60% of Ghana, and then some people in Cote d'Ivoire in the west side of Ghana. It's the society or the practice of this religion has been, or the traditional way of worship and way they live has been in existence, and the last record would be like 300 years ago. Okay, so to be born in an environment with an African traditional religion and practicing Sanatana Dharma, how do I build the two, or how do I link the two? I would always say it is easier to practice Sanatana Dharma as an African than as an European. And these are my reasons. The basic fundamental life of the African traditional religion has so many similarities to the underlying principle in Sanatana Dharma. For example, unfortunately, the problem with the African traditional religion is that when the British and the other Europeans invaded Africa, and there was this whole idea of colonization, a lot of things happened, and then especially with respect to religion, traditions, and other things, were affected. And this had a great impact on how people practice their religion. It got to a stage that people actually saw their religion or their way of life as, in quote, demonic and uncivilized. And this had greatly affected why probably not much is said about the African traditional religion. Okay, so I come back and I try to give my fellow Indians a little bit about the Akan traditional religion. The Akan traditional religion believes in the supremacy of only one God, whom they refer to us as Onyame. The Indians would rather call it Brahman, but the Akan language, the African traditional calls this supreme being Onyame, which simply means the one that if you have, you are full. It simply translates as the one that if you have, you are full. And usually this Onyame is seen as a feminine god. So in the Akan traditional religion, God is seen as a woman, and it is linked to earth. So usually we call earth mother earth as Asaya, meaning mother earth. So in the African traditional religion or the African traditional practice, there is a belief in the existence of a female divinity, a female god, a Shakti, who is worshipped by his people every time and giving reverence. Especially they believe that we walk on Mother Earth, which is God. There is another part where we see God as a man, and this they refer to God as Onyankopon. In the context of God being a man, they refer to God as Onyankopon, which can be translated as one that you depend on, one that one God you can depend on. Okay, so in this, looking at these two components, the Onyame and the Onyankopon, that is the male and the female component, that energy which the Hindu culture will prefer to name it, the illusion, the Maya, the creative force of God, the African traditional religion calls it Kumankumah. So in that, for the traditional Hindus who refer to the creative energy of God, as Maya, or the illusion of God as Maya, the African tradition referred to it as Kumankumah, and that it believes that it is through Kumankumah that creation happens. It is through illusion, through the creation of all these things that everything came into existence. Usually, the African tradition or the African traditional practices or the Akan, I would like to use the Akan, which is the area I'm coming from. Most of the practices and their worship is seen in the forms of symbols, which is very common in the practice of Hinduism. The use of symbols and images. In the same way, when you come to the African traditional religion, one of the key elements in expressing their form of worship is the use of symbols and images. Popular among the symbols is probably, unfortunately, most of their religion was done through, or the religion was not documented. There's no form of text. So you would have more of the oral tradition. So most of the reason why probably we have lost a lot of religion is because our system or our way of worship or how we documented our activities and rituals in the past were done through the oral tradition, which is also common in the Indian society. There are some of the texts, Vedic texts, which were passed on to the next generation through oral tradition. So basically, what I was trying to do was try to link some very key similarities that could be drawn between the Akan traditional religion and the practice of Sanatana Dharma. Like I said, the concept of Sanatana Dharma is basically the way of life. And I usually would say when it went through some metamorphosis that it turned out to be Hinduism. But the originality that began with the beginning of the world is the Sanatana Dharma. And the practice is as easy and as simple as ABC. So let me continue with some of the items that I could draw to show the traces or the similarities between the African traditional religion and Sanatana Dharma. Let me mention reincarnation. I know reincarnation is very common and an ideology that is seen to be that of the Indian background. Deep down in Africa, deep down in the Akan society, there is this existence and belief that reincarnation do occur, though there is no documented evidence to prove or no written text to prove this ideology. The way of our lives, our naming of our children, and our conversation goes to support this ideology that reincarnation do exist. For example, in the Akan system, we have ways of naming some children which clearly indicates our belief in the existence of reincarnation. For example, we have names like Abebiu. It means you are back again. Parents who name their children, you are back again. Abebiu believes that they were one time old family mates because they behave like them, they have certain characteristics like them, and they do believe that they are the people who have reincarnated back into their society. So various aspects of our culture and our language goes to support the argument that reincarnation is believed and practiced and accepted by the Akan traditional people or the Akan traditional religion. Even though there are some scholars who believe that we cannot say that reincarnation is in Africa or is practiced by the African traditional religion. And their argument is that maybe some people may have certain characteristics. So they usually refer to those characteristics or maybe body features of certain people as partial reincarnation. So they usually will say, oh, this is partial reincarnation, not as full. But primarily, you realize that the argument they raise goes all the way to still support that there is something called reincarnation, which is purely believed and practiced by the Akan traditional people. So, typically the Hindu society believes in what we call the soul, the body, and the soul, body, and the spirit. In the Akan traditional way too, we have the okra, which is the soul, and then the honam nipedia as the body, and then sunsum, which is the spirit. And they believe that it is only the body that dies. Meaning the body dies, but the soul, that is the sunsum or the okra, never dies. So they believe, just like in the Hindu traditional culture or the Hindu Sanatana Dharma, they believe that the soul is immortal and never perishes. And then it takes the body based on activities that were the desire. But basically, reincarnation occurs as a response to one's accumulation of desire. It is through desire that we are born back. So the concept of living is to become desirelessness, which is a long journey to be able to achieve that. But the Akan traditional people believe that there is a body and there is a soul and the spirit. And in the soul lives the spirit. So they usually say the sunsum is okra as in the soul. So these items, though like I keep repeating, there are no clear documented texts to support most of the arguments. It is in their conversation, in their symbols, in their naming, in their way of life that they express these practices. Okay. Okay, another point I would want to raise in respect to trying to trace some of these practices that could be found in Sanatana Dharma is the idea of no founder. One of the principles or one of the common traits or common ideas of Hinduism is that there's no founder. Typically in the African traditional religion, there's no founder. You cannot trace to a point that this is the founder of A or B or C. There's nothing like that. They all believe in the existence of a supreme being who through whom everything exists and dissolves back into it, and that he is responsible for death. So obviously, he brings forth and he takes. He dissolves it at the time when the person's essence on earth is over. But there are times we believe, back to the point of reincarnation, let me add this. Sometimes they believe that usually old people, the other little difference between the reincarnation concept is that they believe that old people usually do not reincarnate and they go back and live like ancestors. But when a young person dies, they believe and pray that and hope that they will reincarnate. So usually they believe that once a young person dies, there's going to be a reincarnation for them to finish up whatever they started. All right. There's another point that I would want to add to the traces and the things that I believe connects or shows the similarities between the Sanatana Dharma, that is the Hindu religion, and the African traditional practice. That one is they do not believe in converting people. They do not believe in converting people or attempting people to convert to their religion. You never find the African traditional religion which goes to support the idea that one has to convert into that. They believe that wherever you are, you need to practice. You never find what I would call the conversion treaty or conversion theory in the African traditional religion. Another point I would want to raise is there is no special text, which I have mentioned. The Akan traditional religion do not have any specific text. Just like I said, their traditions are transmitted orally, like the Vedas. And unfortunately, do not have missionaries. That is another problem. Probably Christianity, Islam may have spread because they have missionaries. The African traditional religion did not have any form of missionaries to travel around the world to spread their message. And just like the Hindus, the Akan religion do not have a specific day of worship, like the Sunday for worship, or the Saturday, or the Friday, as it is in other religions. For the Akan people, every day and any day can be used to worship the Almighty God. Unless on special occasions where a community has a day they celebrate a god or a goddess. Beyond that, there is no specific day that the Akan traditional religion chooses to worship the omnipotent and omnipresent. So just like in the Hindu religion, there is no specific day for the worship of the gods. Same for the African traditional religion. The Akan traditional religion, as I said, have only one supreme being, under whom other deities serve and their purpose is on functions. So we have the god of rain, the god of harvest, and all those things. So basically, they believe in the supreme being, and under them are deities they worship for specific functions. Another unique thing about the African traditional religion is the acceptance of sects and then different forms of beliefs.
Within this Akan society, there are various forms of clans. Each of them have their special sect and activities and symbols to represent what they believe in. Nevertheless, the tradition believes and accepts or and accommodate everybody in that totality. Another thing is the worship of ancestors or the honoring of ancestors. Just like Putra, the Putra worship in Hinduism, the Africans also pay a lot of respect and homage to their ancestors. The, Probably one of the things that may have fallen short of the African traditional religion that was in existence years back and have probably lost its touch is the strict moral code of conduct, like the law of Manu that existed, the Manu Smriti that existed in Hinduism. In the African traditional religion, there are strict moral code of conduct, which was practiced by the people. Unfortunately, the infiltration of other foreign cultures may have lowered the strictness of these moral code of conduct. But there is a moral code of conduct, just like we have the law of Manu in the Indian or the Hindu society. And the practice of appeasing gods, yes, of course, just like the Sanatana Dharma or the Hindu religion where we appease the gods, there is the same practice in the African traditional religion where they appease the gods with or without animal sacrifice. The essence of the Akan school of thought, just like the Sanatana Dharma, is based mainly on the oral transmission, that which is written in people's hearts. So basically, you may not have any written document that you can refer to, but they believe that what the text should be written in our hearts, in our minds, and in our histories and our storms. So basically, our religion is practiced basically in our minds, and it should be practiced in our hearts, and it should be practiced in our oral traditions and customs. So that is the best way we practice our religion. We don't believe in the concept of having a documented or an activity to express how we worship, but we believe and promote the worship of our tradition or our practice should be more expressed in our heart activities, in our minds, in our activities, and in our customs. And to worship the Supreme Being, we believe that the Supreme Being can be reached through the consult or can be consulted through the communion with the deities or our ancestral spirits. So this is also done in our society. One of the key things probably today, I wish the African traditional religion could go back. And I think this is another thing that is being headlined in the traditional Sanatana Dharma values or Dharmic values is the environment and nature in which we must protect. I mentioned earlier on that one of the key principles of the Dharmic values is the environment and nature, the respect and the treatment of the environment. In the Akan traditional religion or the practice, the environment was very key. For example, in the olden days, forest reserves were described as evil forests. The concept was that it was to prevent people from walking and destroying these forests, which were being serving as source of serving the people in so many ways. Equally, they found ways to preserve our waters by describing certain waters as gods and preventing people from going in and doing illegal activities within these water bodies. So there were certain things that they did to save our environment, which was part of our practice. The river gods, they named all the gods. The rivers were named as gods, and that people paid reverence to the rivers, the forest, because they needed to find ways to protect our environment. Also, one of the things probably I would mention before I wrap up is some of the symbols. Probably you may have heard of the popular Environmentalism symbols. Probably many of you, but I am sure I'm going to send you some of the pictures of the Environmentalism symbols. Like I said, there were no documented things to show our beliefs, but they were in symbols. For the Akan traditional people to express their belief in the supremacy of God, there were symbols like Jinyami. For them, the symbol Jinyami gave them the hope of the supremacy of the omnipotent. So you will see symbols like Jinyami indicating their belief in the supremacy of the omnipotent. There were other symbols like like in the we have the home sign, the swastika, and all those things, giving clear indication of exactly what it is. Same way in the
minutes, 5 minutes. So I was talking about the use of symbols as its symbols, images and symbols in worship. And it could be traced to the African traditional practice, the use of symbols and images in worship. For this reason, I can conclude, I would want to make a sharp conclusion. What makes it easy to practice Sanatana Dharma as an African? It may sound weird. It may sound weird for an African to be practicing Sanatana Dharma, but I believe that before the introduction, or probably before people got to know the practice is done in Africa, there were similar activities that were performed by the Africans, which goes to show that a long existence of Sanatana Dharma across the globe. It isn't just today that probably people are realizing the practice of Sanatana Dharma is in Africa, but it has been a part of their culture, their way of life, way back many years, just that were not documented, and so we will not be able to tell. But the practice has been in existence. So it goes to tell how old Sanatana Dharma is. But the name may not be Sanatana Dharma as to the Africans, but the way of worship, which shows that the global ideology of Sanatana Dharma can be seen and witnessed across the globe in every culture and in every society. Thank you, everyone. And I have put my little points in a paper. I am still traditional. Usually, I do not type my things. I usually write with my pen before later. I put them on the computer. So I had to write them myself. So I will later put them together and then I may send it to the group.
So with that, I had a couple of questions in mind, and I'll just start off with the first one. As I said that uh, the Hindu religion, or the Sanatana Dharma, as we call it, always has expounded the values of universal tolerance and acceptance. How do you view it in the question, or in the light of when it comes to world peace? So, do you see it as the ultimate enabler for world peace when the world is, struggling with a lot of issues like global terrorism, political contestations, and so many more issues? So, how
Okay,
do you relate
yeah.
Sanatan Dharma? Yeah.
I see the promotion of Sanatana Dharma as one of the major ways of dealing with these global issues. One of the tenets of Sanatana Dharma is oneness, the acceptance of the many ways. You see, the first point of these global issues of terrorism, global war, religions, and other things is the acceptance of the many ways. One of the key beautiful things about Sanatana Dharma is that every way leads to the ultimate. And if the world could appreciate this beautiful ideology that is being spread by Sanatana Dharma, that irrespective of the way, it leads to the same ultimate, as Krishna said, that irrespective of whatever you say, it all comes back to me. So whatever that one practices, whatever ways one practices, will still end up at the same ultimate. This religious war in quotes, which is disturbing global peace, would be solved. Another point I would want to stress is desirelessness. I know there's political and other things. Once we are able to teach desirelessness, the way of meditation, of not being too materialistic and understanding that purposely whatever we may achieve here, we cannot take with us, and that we must seek for the total liberation of ourselves and the self and that of others. I think these various tenets and elements or the values being promoted in Sanatana Dharma, if it becomes global and we begin to see the essence of, like I mentioned, I mentioned some key things that was common to the Hindu family, and I would quickly mention one or two of them. I've got my papers here. It focused on how we can love and respect all living beings. The restriction was the term was all living beings. Once we begin to accept each other, love all, treat our environment as part of nature and as part of God, we may have this global peace we seek to have.
Yeah.
All right.
So I would wish to ask you about your role or what work actually you are engaged in when you say that you're in charge of the children's department at the Krishna temple. So I would like you to highlight upon the work of the temple specifically and your role into that, and what are the noble, work which is going on, because I think you mentioned that previously. So please let us know on that.
All right. I am privileged to be asked to be with the kids. That's my favorite group of people. And the reason why I am happy to be part of this department is that I want to be part of the formation, of their formation. My Sunday school children are very intelligent students. You will not believe them. The questions they will ask, you will not believe them. For example, one student asked me, they went to school. We live in a society where 70% of the population are Christians. And so they do go to school and have certain comments and questions that they would want to understand. So once then, one of my students, Piety, she's 8 years, came and was asking me, when they went to school, they said God created man in his own image. So does it mean God is a man? How come she is a female with a female body? How come? So if God created us in his image, meaning a male body, how come she's a female? Does it mean God didn't create? This is a question from an 8-year-old. It should be deep. So I am happy to be part of this. I get to use the very basic understanding of Hinduism to be able to form these kids, their thinking, try to answer their curious questions using the basic Sanatana Dharma values, and these break them down for them. So basically, I get the chance to listen to them, and then through the basic Sanatana Dharma teachings, try to answer these global questions the best that I can. And if I can't, I draw in the big men and the learned ones to come and assist me. So basically, what we do is that the classes, my Sunday school department has kids as young as 2 years and as old as 12 years. And so we come together, we spend time to watch the story of Mahabharata, bring them into real life. Today, you get a kid to tell you the whole story, tell you the story of Ramayana, and sometimes they would be telling you what happened on the battlefield as if they were there. They tell you the story of Mahabharata as if they were on the battlefield, and they are so happy about how the stories happen, moments with them. So the main duty is to help them understand Hinduism in the context of from the environment they come from. They spend virtually 60% of their, or 100, almost 5 days of their 7 days in schools, which are owned by Christian societies, and so most of the activities and the teachings are in the Christian settings. And so we try to explain to them these teachings and connect them to Hinduism for them to have a better understanding of the practice they are having, so that they will not feel that they are in the wrong path, and then they can understand whatever they are doing.
So if you could also tell us something about the temple, the Krishna temple, and if you can highlight upon this particular thing, that how many temples are there, and you know, in your locality and also in your country, in Africa also. So I remember speaking to Vishnu Kalaman. He beautifully
Yeah.
explained some of the different temples he has visited himself, and he keeps posting on his Facebook page as well. But if you can also, from your end, let us know about the different temples.
Okay, so we have 5 temples in Ghana, one in Togo. Hinduism started in Africa, let me put it in that context, somewhere in 1975, when His Holiness Swami Krishna Nanda Saraswati visited Ghana, and we were fortunate to have met our guru, my guru, His Holiness Swami Gananand Saraswati, who through him was able to put us all together to make us understand our African traditional religion wasn't so different from practicing Sanatana Dharma, and that's how we're able to embrace the love of Sanatana Dharma so well. We have one beautiful temple in Kumasi. It's in an environment that you can feel the presence of God. We've got visitors from usually on Sundays, that is when everybody comes together. We have Hawan, we have Ati, we have Ketans and everything. There are temples in Mampong. We have temples in Tema, Accra, Cape Coast, and Tema, yeah, and then one in Lomé, Togo. So yeah, we have big. We are we have a population of regular visitors to the temple around 3,000, and we have visitors. Usually within the year, we could get visitors close to 1,000 visiting the temple. We have university students from various departments visiting the temple to learn about Sanatana Dharma from the various universities that surrounds us. We have exchange programs with other societies who would want to come around and then interact with us. So it's a temple which welcomes everybody, open 24/7. People come through to have their time, quiet time. Usually we get people walking in just to sit in the temple and enjoy the ambience and relax and think. We've got a beautiful environment with trees and flowers. So people usually, other people from other religions usually come around to sit and relax and enjoy the environment. So we've got a very beautiful, and we welcome everybody, irrespective of where you're coming from, to worship with us. And there's a lot of prasad. You won't believe Sunday we've got people moving from their houses just to come and have a feel of prasad. They may not attend the service, but they will come for prasad.
How beautiful. So I had some of the pictures. Actually, I was going through the Facebook page and I found some of the pictures which you might have had shared. So I'll just share my
Yes.
screen and you will, if you could please explain which temple is this. And I think there's some occasion around which the pictures have been taken. So if you could also
Okay.
tell us something about that.
All right. I took this picture. This is the Krishna temple. I took this picture during Mother Worship when we're having the Navaratri worship in 2021 or 2020 during the COVID-19 period. So yes, this picture was taken during the Navaratri worship.
Okay,
So
okay,
this is
nice.
inside the Krishna temple in Kumasi, Ghana.
Okay, okay. So this is the temple which you were just talking about.
Yeah.
Some more pictures we have of the same temple, I guess.
Oh yeah, this was on the 31st night of 2020. On that night where COVID-19 had come, we had all separated. So we came together to celebrate the night that walks us into the new year. So that is a small Krishna temple. That's a Krishna temple you can see in the picture. That's
Right,
a
right.
Krishna temple.
I think this is the
Okay,
premises
this
of.
one, yes, this, we're having a Hawan. So I took this picture
Okay,
when we're having a Hawan. So that's the
all right,
Hawan
all right.
Kun.
Yeah,
We have people seated around it.
yes. How beautiful. And this is, I guess, this is the entrance.
Yes.
So all right, we had a virtual tour of the Krishna temple at Kumasi, right?
Yes, Kumasi.
Yeah. So as you said, I think I have a last question which I might wish to ask. So as you said that there are certain moral code of conducts that we follow in Sanatana Dharma, and there are so many answers to different questions concerning our life in this world and also concerning afterlife. So, if it is about climate change or about mental health and well-being, you name it, and we have a solution in our way of life. So, how
Yeah.
do you see Sanatan Dharma as the best, option for humanity, and the best way of life if one has to opt for?
Okay, so I would make this conclusion. Earlier when I started, I said I would rather prefer to define or translate Sanatana Dharma as the eternal natural way of life. So once we are seeing eternal natural way of life, it's basically how by default, beyond everything, the natural you supposed to live. And the natural you is an image of God, a soul in you, and that must allow the soul in you to exhibit more of its natural nature than the body. Of course, we realize that the body is just a covering we took to cover the soul. So, for us and for you to be able to have a natural way of life by default, then you must allow the original you, that is the soul, to take the majority decisions in everything. Then once this is done, I am sure life will be very simple. You can answer every simple thing, every single decision, every single problem can be answered once we allow the soul to be more evident and more prominent in our lives, we will be able to do it. Like I said, and I keep repeating, Sanatana Dharma for me is the eternal, natural way of life. So for the natural way of life, you don't need too much. Just live natural. And how do you live natural? Let the soul, which is part of God, that is the Atma, be present in every action and inactions, and you will be okay.